Beautiful. So, hello everyone. We are live today. I'm Phoenix Moranitz, the co-founder of the Awakened Woman Conference, and I'm here today with our featured guest experts and speakers, Zipporah Kingsbury and Dr. Juliana Morris. And today's topic is really so juicy and dear to my heart because it's all around unleashing the primal goddess within us. And the reason why this is so important is because it's been coming through for so many of us women that we really need to get tapped into that primal, wild, fierce side of ourselves that I think society and so often ourselves, reinforce that actually there's no space for it. Can't take up space in the world. And so I'm really excited to be talking with these amazing women and experts around this so that we can get some more insight into tapping into that. And a big part of my own awakening was around awakening that primal goddess and really allowing her to unleash herself. So I'm really excited for these ladies to share their stories. And I'm just going to briefly introduce them so that you know a bit more about them. Dr. Juliana Morris is the founder of Be Your Own Sexpert and the Super Jewels Project. She is a licensed therapist, academic, and bona fide sexpert. So she has spent decades counseling and supporting women on their paths to discover and own their sexual agency. She's an incredible woman with a lot of experience and has engaged audiences on the topic of sexuality as a foundation for female power. She's done this through speaking around the world and various media outlets, including the Discovery Channel's Sex Files series. That's incredible. Welcome, Juliana. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to see you both again and to be a part of this wonderful conversation. It is just any chance I can to talk about this, it just gets me so excited, especially with two other beautiful souls that we're sharing this topic with other amazing people out there. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, when we were speaking of what our topic was going to be today, was I've been working on a lot of work on desire and libido, and two things that always came up for me was the vulnerability and surrender, and how that relates to our pleasure and into who we are and who we are as sexual beings. And I found that the women that I talk with, when you say vulnerability and surrender, it's just this ick and this negative reaction that a lot of women have to those things. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of conscious effort in order to get us to the place of saying that there's some strength and beauty in having vulnerability and knowing what it means to surrender and having the choice of that. And one of the things that I've siphoned it down for is that there's a big difference that is key to understanding the transition from vulnerability and surrender to complete pleasure and connection. And that's the difference between making a conscious act of letting go versus the feeling of loss of control. And so letting go of control versus losing control is the key to that, and understanding what that means for you. And then once you get through the process of having the letting go in your life, seeing how that relates to safety and who you are and the safety that you have in your own body and in any relationship or any kind of sexual activity that you're having with somebody else. And so I really look at having safety and choice and connection is really a triad to having intimacy and to having unbridled welcoming of the pleasure that we have in our life. And I'm sure a lot of people know about Brene Brown and her talk and her work about vulnerability and the strength that we have in vulnerability. But I like to for myself, when I have found the most pleasure in my life, and I look at my whole self, it's when I've let go and made the choice of letting go of what people think of me, and if this is something that's responsible or what a mom should do or a good girl should do, all that kind of stuff. When I let go of those things and I consciously do it, I have so much joy and pleasure and connection in my life. And then like in my sexual life, when I can let go, that is when I invite the most juicy, fabulous sexual experiences, either with myself and just by myself, or with somebody else. Like when I don't care what somebody, if I'm with somebody, what they think of my body, when I can just embrace that and let go of the judgment, either my own judgment or what I'm worried that they may think of it, or what I taste like, or what they think of that sound I just made, or how long it may all be taking. When I can let go of all that, the amount of pleasure just it's just huge, the difference of that. But it's a conscious effort, and it's interesting that it can be very different for women and men, that we have to move into that conscious belief of there's so much strength in having that vulnerability in our life. And I love it when I'm working with women can find that place of this is great, like this is strength, this is beauty, and being vulnerable. That's my juiciness with finding our intimacy in our life.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, I completely resonate with that, and I feel like it also overflows into other areas of our life too, when we are able to kind of tap into that unleashed, liberated part of ourselves, not only in relationship or in sexual experience, but also in terms of our career, in terms of who we show up in the world as. That's liberation. That's when you can let loose on the dance floor and not give a shit. Or that's when you can really allow yourself to, I don't know, hop on a stage and speak, even though you don't have a ton of experience. I feel like that is part of the giving ourselves permission, because no one else is going to do it for us.
Yeah. And so much of why we want to do this is because we want to have connection. We want to have connection with ourselves or somebody else, or we want to have connection with sexual energy, or in relationships. And people are so drawn to authenticity. And when we can really be our full selves, and when we really bring who we are to the table, whether it's on stage or at a karaoke bar or in the bedroom, that's really when we're sharing our essence and who we are. That's what people are wanting, and it's synergy of sharing that connection, that authenticity, and it grows with each other, and and it carries to all areas of our lives.
Beautiful, beautiful connection. Yeah, that's why we're so excited about this conversation today, because we really want to connect with all of you that are tuning in from around the world. And I know, Zipporah, you have a lot of experience too in this realm of intimacy and connection and working with others. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. But first, I want to introduce you, because you've been in my life for quite a while now. And I've seen your work and the impact it's had on others. And Zipporah is such an amazing woman. She's the founder of the Soulful Relating Institute. She's also a world-renowned transformational leader, intimacy and relationship alchemist, as well as a breathwork specialist who serves people worldwide. And you have just finished your upcoming book, Revolutionizing Intimacy. And you also are just working on another book as well. But you've been known as the Bachelor's love guru. I know. And you've been working in this realm for a long time. And so I would love to hear some more from you, Zipporah, too, on this fundamental need for us to have connection, but we can't really have that true, authentic connection if we don't feel liberated in ourselves to go to the places that we want to go within our passion and our expression. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, often, we're so run on autopilot, especially as women, just not knowing how to go that deep inside to feel liberated, or being so scared of it. I want to add into connection with sexual awakening, because there's right. It's so intense, the intensity of energy and the emotion that comes up for women. Most people don't have the skill or the environment or the relationship that creates the environment for them to actually be fully expressed in that. And so, right, what starts to happen is what you both just shared on, is this lack of self-expression, this attachment to how things should be, and how things like the way that our mind, the pictures that we have, or the conditions that we've been given to us, or what family or society has told us, and then that's what we get focused on. And intimacy and sex piece, my invitation is that it's not about the other person. And I think we get stuck in that story, especially when we want to feel pleasure. We want to feel liberation. We want to be met in that place. We want to feel surrender. And we project it, a lot of women, we project it onto our partner. Whereas I would love women to see that intimacy and sexuality and connection is available to us in every moment of our life. And if we finally choose to realize that when we're walking on the beach, when we're walking through the forest, when we're having a conversation, when we're writing a story or a book, when we're speaking on stage, if we are able to recognize that all those experiences can have the quality of making love, it does take the pressure off, and it relaxes the mind. And it's the same way if you're on a date and you have all of this stress and you're wanting to look a certain way or feel a certain way, and sex isn't happening. Like, say that's the scenario, it's just not happening. Well, what can be done in place of that? Well, can you actually drop into remembering every moment is making love, and maybe have a massage with your partner, eye gaze with your partner, breathe, become so present that as a woman, you're so open, like from the heart to the root through the sex, and you feel so juicy that it doesn't matter if intercourse and sexual penetration happens, because you're feeling that. I love to say often I feel like that when I'm grocery shopping. It's just, why not? Why not? And it's essential. And I think now, especially with the Awakened Women Conference and all the programs out there, is women have the opportunity to finally be in a space that they can gather these skills and these tools to go inside. Because, right, so often it's easier said than women are like, how do I do that? But I believe we're going to go into that on this call today.
So what this is like, I was just listening to that with my heart, and I've been having every day I'm having 4 to 5 conversations with women, whether it's women that are coming to the conference or women that are teaching at the conference or women that want to come or that are sponsoring, or just all of these incredible women from around the world. And there's this theme that everyone keeps on talking about, and it's around the fact that this work is such an inside job. It's it's the coming into greater relationship with ourselves, and greater intimacy with ourselves, and allowing ourselves to feel that pleasure that we seek, or to feel that openness with ourselves. And I'm just thinking back to times when I've been on stage where, there's that moment of fear, or there can also be that moment of such deep connection with yourself and your story and your own experiences that's what people really want, is to see that connection that you have with yourself, and how deep can you go with yourself and inside. And I feel like it's because so often our society is set up to look externally for the answers to things, look towards our teachers, look towards authority figures for the answers, when actually we're rarely supported to go within and seek those answers within ourselves. So I'm really glad that we're on this call today. And I'm curious to know, just from both of you, what was kind of that pivotal moment or that transformational moment in your own journey? It could be something that happened recently, or something that kind of started your own awakening, that it really shifted things for you in terms of going within and releasing the layers of conditioning, and allowing yourself to tap into that that primal, raw, wild self that maybe you didn't realize had been there. And maybe a little bit more about what that story has, what happened in that story.
I'll share. So interesting, I just actually finished writing an article about, it's all about talking about sex, and it was going through the journey of my sexual evolution. And back in, I want to say back in my early 20s, it was this period where I remember being in a relationship, and in that relationship, the man that I was with, the joke that we had at the time was he was 60 or 70. He was oversexed. Like it wasn't even important for him. And I was like this nymph. I was just like, I wanted sex all the time. And we joked about it. We loved each other. And it was about 3 years into that relationship that all of a sudden I started looking elsewhere. And this new excitement built in me. And I remember I started flirting with another man, and I instantly broke up with my boyfriend. And that seems like a really strange thought today. But what I recognized was just going through me at the time is I felt so much shame and so guilty over what I was doing that I didn't even give him a chance to know what was going on. I was just like, I did something wrong. This isn't right. I don't deserve you. And after that moment, I started becoming very sexually active. But what I did is I started allowing sex to be very abusive to me. And I shut off my voice. I lost my voice. I started, it was all about getting the man into the bed. And there was no more sense of intimacy or connection, and allowing really men to touch me whatever way they wanted to touch me. And it was in that period that I was also a competitive bodybuilder. And it's interesting how they went hand in hand, because I pushed so hard to become so numb on all levels that I woke up one day and I could barely walk. And it was that moment that I was forced to feel immense physical pain and emotional pain. And that was my wake-up call. And I'm grateful that I listened to it. I was depressed for about a month, but it was at that moment that I said two things. I said, I would rather feel everything than to feel nothing at all, because I recognized how numb I had become to life. And the second thing was that moment I had committed to myself. I ended up being celibate for nearly 7 years. And I committed to myself that it was the time to cultivate a profound relationship with my whole being, including my sexuality. And until I did that, I wasn't going to share myself with another person in that way, because I wanted an extremely new level of relationship in my life. So that was the turning point for me. And it is something I've committed to and devoted my life to until this year. I went through a huge primary relationship transition this year. We're still moving through it. The past 2 months, I took a sabbatical just for myself to come back into getting to know myself. And so I believe that we might have various times in our life that these gifts of change come through, and I believe they're welcoming, like me, to just get to know myself deeper.
So for everyone that's watching out there today, if there's one piece of advice that they could write in their journal, say, for example, if they don't have a partner and they're calling in a level of relationship, or they want to go deeper with that partner, what is one thing that you would recommend them that they can do that's easy and simple?
With your journal, I would basically start bottom line. I would write down and get very clear on what your top 5 values are. Because often people in relationship, and because they crave that, they just crave, right? They crave connection. Like you said, Juliana, they crave connection. They start to settle. And I see where I've settled. They start to settle and becomes the norm. So reflect, go inward, just simple, get a journal and ask yourself, breathe into your body. What are your 5 top values?
Is this like vision boarding your values to attract the one who reflects those?
Yes, but I believe that's the next step. I believe the first step is most people don't remember what their values are. So this is really about, we forget. So this is really about these women to remember and get to know their values again.
Oh, so like creating values for themselves in their relationship with themselves.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's going on in my journal. That's beautiful. So write that down. Write your values in your journal that you want to have in your relationship with yourself. That's brilliant. Thank you, Zipporah. That's so simple and so profound. Because so often I think too, other people, you know, and myself included at times, I've been so focused on like attracting the one, you know, like reeling in the one. And sometimes it's actually about this one right here. The one. I'm the one for me, you know? So that's, oh, I love that. I'm going to get teary-eyed. That's beautiful. Thank you. Oh.
I'd love to share like one of my transformational moments. I haven't had just one that was this huge thing. I've had a series of them. And probably the most recent one was when I was a couple of years ago. I was feeling a little bit stale in my own personal growth, and kind of felt like nothing shocked me anymore. Nothing stretched me and challenged me in my sexual world, because it's what I do for a profession. And I was like, I needed something different. And at the same time, I found out that my mentor, who I thought had retired, was not retired, and that was actually doing workshops again, Betty Dodson. And so I called immediately, and I was like, I'm going, without really knowing what I was getting myself into. And I went and signed up for her. I was the one person that just canceled. I was the last person to get in. It was the last body sex workshop of the year, and I just got a plane and I flew myself up to New York City, and thought I was going professionally, and did not realize that I was really going for myself. And I didn't have any idea how desperate I was to have this reconnection with who I was. So with these workshops, you go in naked, and you walk into her apartment, and you're greeted and by her assistant, and you have to. And I walked sick. And
Julia, I'm not sure if anyone else heard that. You kind of froze for a second, like right at that climax.
You missed the climax.
You're naked and then done. Okay, sorry. When I was walking up to the building, is that what you heard last?
Yeah, you get to the door, and then that was where we left off.
Oh, you have to take off all your clothes.
Okay.
And I knew that, and I thought that was easy peasy. It wasn't going to be a very big deal for me, but I had a hard time even walking up to her building when I knew, when I got in the elevator and got to her apartment, what was going to happen. And then it was just me. I was just sitting there facing this fear that I had not even realized was going to be a problem. And it was a very safe environment. It was, she's been doing this with 2,000 women. There was nothing for me to be afraid of but myself. Yeah. And so I had to do a lot of soul searching and just push myself to get up there. And then it was like, well, kind of screw it. I did it. I paid it. I'm going to do it. And just kind of took a deep breath and took off my clothes and walked into the big room, and where other women were already there naked and waiting, and she had the room set up for what we're going to be doing. And in minutes, it was nothing. It was nothing to be naked. It was beautiful to be normal and just sharing. There was no identifiers. You didn't know what people were wearing. You didn't know their wealth. You didn't know their profession. You didn't know anything but what you saw in their bodies. And there wasn't jewelry. There was absolutely nothing. And it was so freeing. It was so beautiful. And we started off the circle with talking about our relationship with our bodies and with our orgasms. I was like, well, I'm fine, and it's not going to be hard for me to share. And I got more and more emotional as the circle went forward, and I was touched by other women's stories of vulnerability and their relationship with their body. But I also started becoming afraid of what I was going to. I didn't know what I was going to say. I didn't know how I was feeling, and I had never been asked it before. And that was a fascinating realization too. I'd never been given the opportunity to say how I feel about my body and who I am within it. And so to find that voice And to be somebody who's so comfortable with anyone talking to me about themselves and talking about that, to be a person that all of a sudden felt little and felt afraid, was a place of authenticity that was scary and sometimes sad, but also just so freeing. And it was just so lovely to share that space with each other and to support each other's journeys, and then to find that place for myself. And it's a 2-day workshop, and I won't get into all the details of that, but the other parts of it are very expansive and transformative for me too. But the woman who walked in that door the first day was not the woman who left the next day. And there was no going back. And it was because of the nakedness, but also it was because I allowed myself to share that and to share myself with other people with no labels, no fronting, and no intellectualizing things. It was just being me with other women being who they are and creating a sisterhood of acceptance.
Wow. Wow. Incredible. And I can resonate with that story too as well, because I've had certain experiences in my life where, you know, you intellectually think like, oh, that's not going to be a problem for me. You know, I'm open, I'm totally out there. And I've had similar experiences where I did a Tantra workshop, and I was like, I got this, you know, and throughout the course, it really pushed me to like understand that like who I thought I was and actually my edges were a lot different, you know, and it's one thing to think about things. It's another thing to actually experience and kind of rub up against the edges of our comfort zone. And I think it's so beautiful, because when we do push against those edges, we realize that there's even more space that we didn't realize that we could take up or experience. So I really appreciate that sharing, because I feel like both of your stories are kind of, they're helping to understand that we as women are really coming into our sexual power now, I think. And it's not about us being able to have sex with whoever we want. It's not about the shallow surface stuff. It's really about sovereignty in our bodies. It's really about owning our pleasure and not being afraid of it. And with that pleasure also comes our own power. And claiming that for ourselves. And I feel like that's what this revolution is about, is that women's voices need to be heard together. And would you say that that's accurate? I'll let you jump in, Juliana.
Oh, I lost you for a little bit.
I lost you. You froze. Phoenix.
Oh, just Oh, did I freeze? Mercury retrograde. Yeah, just the connection between personal power and our sovereignty and our sexual power, how they actually are very intertwined. And so often when I'm talking with women and they're experiencing issues in their life, whether it's in their careers, in their business, I ask them the question like, well, how tapped in are you with your sexuality? Oh, well, not really. Or they just don't even want to talk about it. And it's like, well, that's so integrated. It's so integrated. So would you say it is when a woman finally starts to uncover her edges and step into her sexual power, will it overflow into other parts of her life?
I want to answer that by starting off with a little backstory. Well, first of all, I love the word sovereignty too. That's a really cool word to associate with sexuality and awakening and owning it. That really resonated with me. But I had a conversation recently with a gynecologist who said that so many women that walk in her door say they're sorry. In the exam, during the exam, oh, I'm sorry, whatever it is that they feel bad for, they automatically have genital or body shame in it, and how hard it is for her to work through that, to tell them it's okay. But she said it's the same conversation over and over again, different things that they're apologizing for. And so we started talking about that and realizing that we are, as women, we are often taught and we are modeled to say we're sorry for things, especially when we're showing up. and especially when we're in our power. We're sorry for when we're successful. We're sorry for when we're not. We're sorry for when we are in our power. We're sorry for when we're not. And when we can shed that sometimes automatic apology that can be in our soul or be in our presentation, then I really feel like we have that place to be that sexual woman who is unapologetic, but also it doesn't have to be in your face. Like we were saying, being a sexually empowered and awakened woman doesn't necessarily mean that you're being sexually active. Like Zipporah, when you were celibate for 7 years, I know you were in your sexual power, and it had nothing to do with sexual activity, or a different kind of with somebody else. And I love it when I see women, and for my own life too, when I can say this is, and as you said, support, these are my values, and I'm not sorry for those. And my values may change as I grow and as I learn, and that's okay too. And this is my best self of who I am internally, and as I'm trying to grow as a human being, and how I can present myself to you and interact and connect with you. And I'm not sorry for that. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do things that aren't correct. I'm going to learn from them, and I'm going to embrace that. And I find that to be a sweet spot for connection and energy flowing, when it's okay to have those rough edges. So you said, Phoenix, and it's let's welcome that. Thank goodness we had those edges. Thank goodness we have those parts to rub against each other, or really that's so much of what we're here for, is to connect with other people, to connect with ourselves, and to teach and learn and grow from each other.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I know, Zipporah, you have, and I actually have a question too after this, but I'll let you step in there, Zipporah.
I was just reflecting on that piece when you brought in values again, and learning to be unapologetic for our values. And it was interesting. I watched a journey like with me for my business and my sexuality. Right. And for those of you entrepreneurs and business leaders out there, it's, I hired a full team, right? And you have the strategists and the branders and what they're telling you, right? What you're supposed to look like, or what shouldn't be out there. I'll be totally authentic here. Is I remember when I was on The Bachelor, and someone on my team was just like, I recommend taking all your very sexy photos off social media. I do really sexy shoots yearly for women's empowerment, and I did that to a degree. And just a few weeks ago, I did a nude shoot and posted the photos.
Oh, I love them. It was hot. They were so great.
Yeah.
And that was, I would see where I stepped away. I'm like, this is part of who I am and part of who we are, and owning our values in the same space. This is just a key that I want to bring into it, is when we step into owning our values, we are also stepping into clarity of our boundaries, of the boundaries of the environment that we're in. So when we get that in tune in our bodies in relation to our sexuality, in that place of liberation, that's where our actions, they're not harmful to the environment, but they're actually, they're aware of the ecosystem. And so, now it's like, wow, yes, I'm going to pose this way because it actually is teaching material to how I want women to step into an invitation to step into their fullness. So I just want to add that piece around boundaries, and we become more aware. Again, just to repeat this, more aware of our ecosystem when we come into our values and don't apologize for them and stay true to who you are.
Yeah, and that was segueing into the question that I wanted to pose for you too, on the second thing that women can integrate into their lives to become less apologetic. What would you say is the number one habit that you've integrated into your own life that reminds you to step into that sovereign place, you know, that reminds you to be unapologetic about who you are, what you desire, how to feel pleasure. Like, what is that one habit that you have found has really helped to recenter you in that knowing?
For me, it's an awareness of what my body's feeling in a situation. And so I always base everything on what my body's feeling. So a tool I use, if I'm in a situation and I'm starting to feel uneasy in my body, contraction, and I started to become more superficial, right? Less authentic, less connected to myself. In those moments, I really pause. It's so, I just pause and I'm like, okay, why am I feeling this? What am I doing or apologizing for that's actually not true for me in the moment? Like, where have I stepped out of my center, my integrity? And then I do it again. I do it in a different way. So it's so simple. Just step back, pause, feel what's alive for you, and you might have to take space and then recap and go back into that situation again and do it differently.
So especially too, if someone's at like a major crossroads in their life, to really listen to what their body is telling them. And I would attribute that to like women's wisdom, you know, within their womb, you know, like what is your gut saying? So I love that. So listening to your body and what your body is saying. And Juliana, what would you also say is yours?
I really respond well to rituals, and when that I do a crossover, that if something is negative and it's not working right for me, then did I freeze?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't sure if I froze again. Sorry.
Second there.
Okay.
You're back on.
So you all froze. I was like, wait, did I? So when something isn't feeling right for me, I go through it consciously, and I do this is what's no longer serving me. This goes over here. And it could be like I go for a walk, and I'll stop on the pathway, and I'll go through what those negative things are or what isn't working for me. And then I will choose a place that when I get there, I'll have released it. And so through the journey, as I walk with each step, I take that in and I transition myself from the negative to the positive. When I've reached from this side to the next side, I have been focusing on the positives or where I'm headed in that. And then when I get to that, whatever the place is that I've chosen, then I celebrate that, and I'm grateful, and I look back, and I'm not upset with where I've come and what the negatives were. I bless it. I thank you, but you're not a part of my journey moving forward. And sometimes I have to do that a couple times on a walk. And if I can't go for a walk and make it physical, then I do it in my journal. And I'll start on one side of the page, and I'll do an arrow to the right side of the page, and kind of and just represent it in my journey that way. And it just helps me to get concrete and get a visual that snaps me back in.
So what would be the one ritual that you do every single day? I love these questions. They get right into like your private life.
I do meditation, and so I have like my dropping in of what I do of intentions before I get into my typical meditation. And those dropping ins can come from whatever I've kind of woken up with, or if there isn't anything on tap, then I look at my vision board and see like, what is it, an actual thing that I want to be focusing on, or is it an emotion that needs to be tended to in my life? And when my day is really going great, meaning like it's together or it's really a mess, I meditate at night too before I go to bed. I really try to get 2 in.
Oh, beautiful. I'm still trying as a new mother to integrate meditation into my life, because sometimes I have a little baby that's crawling on me. So because that is part of one of the next questions that I had too is as women, you know, sometimes we go through these transitions. Maybe it's like we, you know, get in an accident and we gain 50 pounds, or somebody that we love and we go through, you know, a grief process, or, you know, we switch jobs and we're transitioning, or we have a child. And sometimes those things can really throw us off in terms of feeling beautiful and feeling sexual and sensual and powerful. And I know for myself, after I had my baby, it was
Support, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Phoenix
Is she gone? Yeah. I was like, are we both there? Well, she's coming back in. I wanted to say that when you talked about boundaries related to values, it was so hard to keep quiet. I wanted to say yes, 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 yes. And what was so excited to hear that connection back with it is that what I've seen so much is when you are seeking intimacy, pleasure, and connection, safety is such a huge part of it. And safety is defined differently for everybody. And safety is part of allowing the letting go. And I think it's a missing piece so often as we go through the journey of finding that self connection and with others, that we will do the work with values, but we don't necessarily take it to the boundaries part. And I just love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, Phoenix, I think Phoenix is back. Are you back, Phoenix? Can you hear us? Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Oh, hello. We just kept on talking.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just, how can women tap into that primal sensual goddess staying inside, even if their bodies don't reflect how they want to feel, or, they don't feel sensual? What is something that can kickstart them back into that connection with themselves in that way?
So there's an important piece I have found in kickstarting the feelings of sensuality again. And honestly, it might seem a little bit going backwards or pausing. It is pausing. It's if we're going through a transition which stimulates emotions, maybe sadness or grief, often, unfortunately, what we're trained to do is we want to jump back to the pleasure. It's like, there's something wrong. We need to jump into pleasure. Where's my sensuality? I need to feel turned on. Something that I cover in my new book is conscious mourning. And so I want to remind the women, one of the ways to actually get back into feeling sensually alive is going through into the mourning, and to allow that to be a rites of passage and a ritual, because that has potent information for us to actually feel again, because mourning is just a feeling. And if we choose to ignore that feeling, we are actually creating constriction in a frozen state in our body, which is also going to block the flow of us feeling sensually alive.
Wow, that's powerful. And I mean, I guess a question I have is, how would you differentiate that space of safe to mourn, or if it's depressed?
Yeah,
I guess maybe would somebody know?
So
that would, like myself, I didn't realize, I think, that I was in postpartum for so long,
Yeah, so one of the practical steps is make sure you have a support system. And for me, when I've gone through stages, I went through a big, like I said, relationship transition this year, and it was making sure there's a support system in place, whether that was my partner who I was transitioning with, who's extraordinary, to a friend, a close friend of circle, so you can check in. One of the ways I differentiate it is it controlling me? Like, is it taking me so deeply that it's really controlling me? And you can feel that, versus, am I simply in partnership with it to feel it, right? So there's a difference to be able to sit, to cry, to mourn the past, to create a ceremony or ritual to mourn the past, and then depression, which often really takes control of us, right? Where you can't get out of bed, really struggling, yeah. So have a support system who's going to mirror you can talk to.
And I like that idea of a ritual that you can actually celebrate the mourning process, because I think too, especially in North America, I think we know that we aren't really supported either in grieving. That it's seen as being weak, and it's seen as being, even like at funerals that I've been to, there's not a lot of people mourning because they feel afraid to be that vulnerable and to be seen in that way. So I really love that. Oh, it's powerful, powerful. Thank you, Zipporah. That's beautiful. So ritual of being able to mourn whatever wants to move through us. And I think that also I would say too, is it's really allowing ourselves to feel deeply, even when it's not pleasure, but and I think maybe you would attest to that, is that when we do allow ourselves to feel deeply in pain, it also allows us to feel equally deeply in pleasure.
Yes.
And Juliana, I know you had something too to share, and I think you might have shared it earlier.
About the depression or the mourning, or which piece? What would you like me to speak to? Well, I'll say one of the things, and I really love what Zipporah was saying about recognizing
the rituals that you would
ritual. Is that what she was saying? The ritual, you think? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So,
meant for women.
One of the things that I looking at the shoulds that you're entertaining and that you're giving energy to in your life, that are you feeling like you should be feeling this way? Are you focusing on what your body should be doing after a baby? How often should you want to be having sex? And what should pleasure feel like? How quickly should I have an orgasm? When you're focusing on the shoulds, instead of embracing and recognizing that in all areas of that we wax and wane, and that is part of a natural process in our life. Now we can, when we wane to a big degree, like with a relationship loss, or if we are experiencing depression or something difficult, or disconnect, that's different. And we can often really get mired up in the shoulds and what we should be having. But I like starting with recognizing that. And often when we can voice those shoulds, it automatically gives a lessening of the power of that. And then what you do next is you start making those decisions of forgiving yourself for not being in a should anymore, and giving yourself grace in that. When we give ourselves grace, sometimes that can be a lot harder than giving it for others. So I always talk about when you are kind to yourself and giving yourself those rooms, then you are really creating that for the other sisters around us. And if you have to start there, if it's just uncomfortable and hard to give this to yourself and be kind to yourself, then you're setting that example for somebody else and giving her room and helping her to grow. And in the circles, and like Zipporah, what you were saying about having that support system, showing that to another sister or to a man in your life too is such a gift for them. And it comes back, because when you can open up like that, they are often going to be opening back up to you and giving you that support.
Yes, I'm going to go with this because we lost it.
Yes.
I loved what you shared about the waxing and the waning, because I think that's a piece in the West that we've forgotten about. That just like nature, right? Everything in nature, there's a season to it, and the stress that gets put on us, or that we put on ourselves, that we're always supposed to be on. Mm-hmm. That like you said, the shoulds, whereas those winter seasons, they deserve deep reverence and recognizing them, and more so a reminder is that, right, when we recognize them and feel them and honor them for